course on the importance of color in affecting the future fortunes of global financial markets. It all looked pretty red today, but I'm sure there's more to it than that. So Henrik joined us from a school in China, but is Swedish by background. We have actually 33 countries represented on our faculty. We have 78 countries represented in the student body of our school. So Henrik, please come forward and share your thoughts. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here. Thank you.
Okay, so let's see, can we switch over to my presentation? And what about the sound is okay? Everyone can hear me? All right, so thank you so much, Dean Quelch, for inviting me to talk a little bit about what I've been working on in my research. And it's not only myself, but as a researcher, you work on a team normally. So here we have two great people on my team. One is our PhD student, Will Basley. He will be on the job market this year, and I'm sure he will get a great job at another fine institution. And then Millie Mormon used to be on our faculty here, and then she moved to SMU. And so what this, let's see how I do this. All right, so what this research is about, it's about the impact of color on investment behavior. So now I do a lot of things for our school that has to do with administration and leadership of the school, but I was trained as a researcher in the area of finance. And so this is sort of representing some of that work in the area of what we call behavioral finance. Behavioral finance is integrating traditional way to think about finance and financial markets with psychology. Some of you may have heard about Richard Thaler. He won the Nobel Prize last year for some of his work in the area of behavioral finance. Now, so this work that I will talk about today fits into to this domain. Now, and this may surprise my new German friend here that Goethe did not consider himself a very good poet, but he did consider himself a very good color theorist. And so what this has to do with is what is the impact of different colors on human decision-making and behavior. Now, so in the context of financial markets, of course, if you go to traditional platforms for information about financial numbers, stock prices, you will see all sorts of colors represented there. However, most commonly you will see the color green, the color red, the color blue. All right, and so here are some examples of that here. So we were really interested in, on my team, so does this have an impact on how investors, they actually process information and ultimately how they behave when they make decisions? So this fits into an area of research that is called color psychology. That's a whole subfield within the domain of psychology research. And I just mentioned a couple of different references here that comes from some of the most prestigious scientific journals that we can think about, such as Science and Nature. So in the last decade or so, there has been publications related to the impact of color on human behavior. And also one thing that I wanted to notice here is that just now 2 years ago, the first handbook of color psychology came out. A scholar at the University of Rochester put together this handbook, which sort of shows that this is an emerging field. There's a body of research related to color and human behavior. And there was enough work that they managed to put together this handbook. Now, so why would color impact human behavior and decision making? So what are the channels? And so there's basically two different channels that the research literature has identified. One is what we call an evolutionary channel or mechanism, and another one is the cultural mechanism or channel. So let me first talk a little bit about the evolutionary mechanism. And I will do this in the context of another research study that a team of researchers, they did. And it's actually quite interesting. it shows that how we might respond to color is not only among human beings, but it's sort of, this effect is transferable also to animals. So in this particular study, which was published in a top psychology journal, the researchers, they were looking at basically the reaction of monkeys to the color red. And so the idea here behind the color red is that that might be something that is associated with danger and caution, okay? And so these pictures may be a little bit blurry, but they come from the original research study. So let me explain to you what the researchers did. You can see that there's two different researchers in the picture there, one to the left and one to the right. And they wear outfits. In this case, to the left, the outfit is a blue outfit, and then to the right is a red outfit. And then there's the monkeys in the middle. So the way they did the experiment was as follows. Basically, imagine a small bowl with some grapes in it, and you put this down next to your feet. That's what both of these researchers did, okay? So now there's a bowl of grapes, monkey in the middle, and we have the two researchers and a bowl with grapes. Then what they did is that they turned away from the bowl, and they would see which bowl would the monkey, on average, they did this for a number of different monkeys, which one would the monkey avoid more? And the results can be summarized quite clearly in this picture. So you can, what this picture is telling us is that the monkey tend to go and grab the grapes that was closest to the person that did not have a red outfit. So it didn't matter in this experiment if the outfit was green or blue, but they tend to avoid red, okay? So this may show to us that there's sort of this deep instinct, even in monkey, to sort of avoid something that is red. And as you can see here, it didn't really matter if the experimenter was male, female, so it was quite carefully done. So this is sort of one mechanism that it's evolutionary ingrained in monkey and in human beings they tend to have the color red, and so this also signals caution, right? And some of us, we do grading for a living, right? And sometimes we use the color red for that. And so this also sort of signals then from early on that here's something you have to be careful, there's something that is not right, you're not on the right track here. So this is what we call sort of the cultural mechanism. And so the first study that we performed here was basically we asked our subjects to make a choice between two different lotteries, okay? And what was the treatment condition here was to use the color red for losses, to make sure that the loss was, at the top there you can see the loss in one of the cases is $1.50, in the other case the loss was $5. So the losses were marked in the color red, versus at the bottom there you see that everything is in the same black font. And so we were sort of curious about, would this impact the way people choose between these different lotteries? And it turns out that indeed it has an impact. So these were the same set of type of subjects. So they were sort of randomly assigned to the two different conditions. And what you can see in this graph is basically those that faced the losses in the color red, they became more risk averse, okay? They took less financial risk. And so that's what we showed in this study here. Now, another thing that you sometimes see if it's on a Bloomberg terminal, if you're a professional investor, or on Yahoo Finance or Google Finance, is that you have a stock price paths. So this is a past price for a stock, and it has been going down. And at the top, we use the color red for that graph, and then at the bottom we have the same graph, but it's in the color black. And then what we did is that we asked people to form expectations about where do you think this stock price will be 6 months into the future. And so again, this was sort of two randomly assigned groups of subjects, so we wouldn't expect them to do anything different. other than maybe based on the color here. So then what we found is that those that saw those stock price paths in the color red, they tend to be more pessimistic about the future. They are more cautious about their estimates about the future. This graph basically presents those numbers that they project for the future in terms of returns here for the two different conditions, the red condition and the black condition. And as you can see, we asked them to predict three different things. Where do you think the stock price is most likely to be, the worst case scenario and the best case scenario? And for each of those different predictions that our subjects they did, you can see that they are more cautious and more pessimistic about the future if they see the stock price path in the color red. So then, being a researcher, we also need to do some sort of falsification tests or placebo tests. And when we started to work on this research project, then we had a discussion on the team about what about colorblind people? We need to make sure that they get excluded, right, from the sample. And then I said, yes, but we could also use those guys to our advantage, right? So we actually sampled only colorblind people, and then, let's see here, I don't know what number you see here. If you see 50, I think 57, that means you're not colorblind. If this is a blur, then you might be colorblind. Red, green, colorblind. And then, of course, when we do this, right, then we don't want to find any effect among the colorblind people. And in fact, that's what we could show. So this sort of nails down the mechanism a bit here. It has something to do with the color. It's not something else that is going on in the background. At least that's the argument that we're making with this piece of research. And then I've had a great fortune, I was actually reflecting on this earlier today, I've had the great fortune of presenting this paper at many different conferences, I think pretty much on every continent except Africa at this point. So this has been presented in Asia, in Europe, North America, South America. And one thing that has come up as some of the comments by people when we have made these presentations is, well, but it's red color, it's clear that it sticks out more, it's a salience effect. You can substitute that black for some other color and you will probably find the same effect. So of course everyone have their favorite color, so you should look at pink or orange or green. So, if you look at those financial platforms, the most common colors are green and red and blue. So we figured, okay, let's redo our experiments with the color blue. And what you can see here is that there's very little difference between these bars that you see in this graph, and that's exactly our point. If you substitute the red color in those previous experiments that I described for blue color, you don't find that distinct effect. So it's not having a different color in and by itself, such as red. It can be substituted for blue, but it's something that is specific to red color. And then, of course, having, as the dean mentioned, before joining University of Miami, I had the great pleasure of living and working in Shanghai for almost 3 years. And of course, and not only in China, but in some other countries as well, which is why I found this to be a good audience to present this research for. We have different associations with the color red. So this gentleman here looks like he is very, very sad because you can see the board behind him is all red. But actually, I think those are tears of joy, because in the Chinese stock market, the color red is used for positive returns, so when the prices go up. And so then what we did is that we wanted to replicate our study, and we did this in Shanghai using a set of subjects over there. And so we wanted to see if the effects were different. And there could be a range of different things that could happen. One, it could be that we find the same effect in the Chinese market. It could be that the effect reversed itself because of the association between financial markets, and the color red in China is very different than in many Western countries, or we could find that basically the effect got neutralized. And we found the former. So while we had those striking significant differences before for our US subjects, those effects were not reversed, but they were neutralized. They're gone when we were looking at the data from China. So, so basically, to sort of sum up here, what we were doing in our study is that we're looking at the link between color and then financial decision making. And the first finding that we had was basically that if you use the color red, then people tend to become somewhat more risk averse when they make investment decisions. So you can quantify that as about a quarter more risk averse compared to otherwise similar subjects that do not see those data in the color red. So that's the first effect, has to do with the risk perception. And then the second effect has to do with when you form beliefs about the future, which traders in the stock market do all the time. And then you tend to become more pessimistic or more conservative if you see those stock price paths about the past in the color red. And then the last point here is very important, and also very important, I think, given today being the UN Day, is that culture, so cultural context, does matter for behavior and how you react, in this case, to the color red, because we see very dramatically different effects for how this influences behavior in the US versus in China. So those are the main findings that we have over here. And here we have a little graph where this gentleman is sort of both red and green and has some different attitudes there. So, so thank you very much for listening. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Do we have a couple of questions? Do we have some time for that? So a couple of questions. Anyone that has some is curious about our work? Yes? Yes, it's a very good question. So what do actually financial companies, how do they utilize this? And we had the great fortune to be able to talk to actually a robo-advisor company. So this is the new type of advisors that basically use artificial intelligence and other approaches to giving advice to their clients. This one is a pretty big one. It's a startup company. And so we talked to the chief of behavioral decision making within the group, and he said that they spend considerable amount of time and effort and resources on looking at what specific colors that they should use. Now, they were very cautious not to use the color red for stock returns or the stock price paths. But in their case, on their platform, you set up a goal for how much you want to save for the future. And what they did use the color red for was not anything that has to do with stock returns, because their idea was that that's something that we cannot affect anyway. But what we can affect is how much we're saving for the future. So if they projected that you would be outside of the range that you were saving for, then they would use the color red as an indication of caution. So yes, this is something that is used in practice, and I think it's spending a lot of time on and effort on in the real world as well. Yes?
When they need to request sponsorship or donations?
That we have not looked at that specifically, but one thing that we did learn through the process was that apparently within, sort of unrelated to your question, but I think you might enjoy the answer, one thing that we learned through the research process was that apparently within IBM, in their investor relations department, they are not allowed to use in their printed materials the color red. Of course, if you're in the investor relations department, you want to provide information to your investors, but not necessarily affect them in sort of by the color in and by itself, but by the information content instead. All right. Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Henrik. So I think I now like to invite up to the stage a representative of the Consular Corps to make a few remarks. Consul of Spain. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm talking on behalf of our Dean, Marta Jaramillo, who couldn't make it today. And as a sense of respect, she was tangled with something important. But I want to first share with you, especially those of you that are students and that have not read the UN Charter. The UN Charter has in its preamble and in its objectives, and if you read those articles, you can still see the validity of the United Nations. United Nations was created as the daughter of the League of Nations. It was created precisely to avoid the plague of war and the plague of famine and other things. And it was created, thanks again, to the United States of America after the Second World War. The establishment of a forum where countries could share principles, ideas, and cooperation is extremely important. We have here the representative, the Consul General of the Netherlands, where the siege of the headquarters of the International Court of Justice in The Hague is so important and has solved so many problems. And we have, of course, the Security Council, General Assembly, many other institutions, organizations, specialized agencies that have helped us to solve many problems. Here in Miami, I think it's very timely to celebrate this anniversary. Miami is a very cosmopolitan, very modern city, 2.7 million inhabitants, but with many, very many nationalities. I'm not just talking about the Hispanic or the Latin American, but we have a very good, excellent representation of general consuls. We have European countries, we have Turkey that is here representing us as well. We have many European Union countries as well, from all sorts, and I'm just talking about professional diplomats, but people that as honorary consuls help to blend together to help with these relations and these international relations. I want to finish by praising the University of Miami for hosting these and other very important activities that help us to reach to you students. We are at your disposal. We are part of the UN, and remember one of the anecdotes of the UN is that when people criticize UN, they don't really get into the deepness of what they are criticizing, because they are criticizing themselves. Because the issue is UN is what countries want UN to be. And to solve problems, we have, I think, worldwide, there's a lot to do, but obviously a lot of things have been, and problems and challenges have been saved, like famine, like disease, like international cooperation, avoid wars, establish disputes through legal and peaceful means. All this is UN, and I believe that through the teachers and the professors and the dean and the students, we can make all together a better world. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much indeed again. We're going to go to a reception in just a moment or two. I thought I might just pick up on the remarks just made by asking one trivia question to see who in the audience can get closest to the right answer to the question I'm about to answer. And even the consuls can play in this game if they wish. And the question is, how many peacemakers are currently deployed under the United Nations around the world? Within 1,000, okay, just to be a little bit more generous. Anyone like to have a go? Yeah, thank you. 45,000, okay. Let's take two more guesses and we'll see who comes closest. And yes, ma'am. 50,000? 55, okay. 120,000. 73. 95. Goes to the lady who said 120. It's 110,000 people are currently serving around the world on behalf of the UN in peacekeeping roles. So come up and claim your award. I'm afraid, consuls, we're not a very rich school, so our gifts can't be that extravagant, okay? And I know that you're under severe constraints from your governments in terms of what you can accept. So what we have for you today is nothing more than a simple Miami Business School mug. I hope you'll treasure it for a long, long time. But congratulations to you for winning the trivia contest. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, all right. So now let's go and enjoy each other's company outside. We have a nice reception for you. Thank you.